Good morning from Batumi here in the Republic of Georgia. Today I'm heading to Senaki, I think it's called Senaki. There's a Soviet air base there from this book that I've been reading called Fulcrum, and the tagline is, "A Top Gun pilot's escape from the Soviet Empire." And so I came all this way to Georgia and I want to check out this air base where this guy stole this super advanced MiG-29 fighter plane and he defected to Turkey. And I think that was in 1989. He was the last important defector of the Cold War. His name's Alexander Zuyev. So yeah, this book is great. There's no audiobook. I had to buy a used copy on Amazon. And today we're going to explore a little bit of the story of this book. So join me as we learn about Fulcrum and we learn about Captain Zuyev. Right now we're actually going through a little bit of traffic. We're at this port city of Pati. The first stop on the journey is an off the beaten path city called Senaki. Like I said, the reason I want to go there is because there's some history there. There's a military base there. That's where Alexander Zuyev stole the MiG-29 and defected to Turkey. When Georgia was in the USSR, Senaki Air Base used to be called Mikha Tskhakaya Air Base or Ruslan Air Base. I think it was named after the head of the Communist Party here in Georgia. After I finished reading the book, I was surprised how much it gave me to think about. For example, right here, you open the inside cover, there's some reviews. Fulcrum is a must-read for anyone who wants to know why the Soviet Union collapsed. A powerful testament to the internal forces that brought down the mighty Russian bear. In the book, he talks about going to school, joining the wrestling team, working hard to get in shape. Eventually, he won a wrestling championship. He joined the military, went to flight school, and was at the top of his class, flying the most advanced fighter jet in the Soviet Union at the time, the MiG-29. But then he talks about how he became disillusioned with the Soviet Union.
I was living in a country that lied to me
about
all justice, about all history of the Soviet Union.
For example, Chernobyl, he said that he saw a story in the state paper. It was just a paragraph really that said there was an accident, but everything is under control. And he said those words stuck with him, and it felt like there was something off about that. He talked to his mom about it, and she said, "Sasha, do you know what they are paying people to go to Chernobyl to work there and to help?" And she goes, 350 rubles per day. 350 rubles was a very good monthly salary at the time. And both him and his mom knew that there was something seriously wrong, something that they weren't being told.
In the days after the accident, party officials maintained everything was under control. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that the public evacuation began.
But party officials evacuated their families and children 2 days after that accident. So how would you feel?
if you had a kid.
How would you feel? Yes.
And you couldn't get that child out for 2 weeks, and you knew that the party officials had done it within 48 hours of the accident.
Yeah. How would you feel? Would you think, it was fair system? Would you feel that you will be happy to defend that system?
He also talks about how he heard stories eventually, maybe in the 80s, how the Tsar was shot and killed and thrown down a well after his body was burned by the communists. And they talk about how people were finding mass graves from the Stalin times, and where the black van would come and take people away and they would never be seen again. He also talks about a Korean air flight that was shot down by the Russians.
10 days before that flight, Arctic gale knocked down the radars on the Kamchatka Peninsula, the key warning radar. They were not operational. Moscow knew about this fact. Moscow made a big pressure on the local authorities to fix them. They fixed some of them, but not all of them. So they didn't have full coverage of that airspace. But they reported to Moscow that they fixed those radars. So
they lied to Moscow?
Yeah, they lied to Moscow.
269 people died.
Yes.
Because the radar was down and because
some people
lied to Moscow.
Trying to save their ass. Let's put them this way.
And so he keeps hearing the official story from the state, and then there's conflicting information that he's seeing every day. And he said he was faced with the choice that he either had to trust his own government or trust the Americans. And eventually he decided to trust the Americans. And he started listening to Radio Free Europe, which was, of course, labeled as propaganda, and it was illegal to listen to. And their version of the truth seemed to make a lot more sense than the official state version. Certainly there were a lot of things that led him and many others inside of the Soviet Union to become disillusioned with the system. For him, the final nail in the coffin was, so he was stationed here in Georgia, and he also spent a lot of time in Tbilisi.
There was a political demonstration in Tbilisi
where the military was sent in, and the official story was the crowd had attacked, but he talked to his friends there, and they said that the military came in and just started attacking.
People demonstrated for democratic changes. They were peaceful demonstrators. I was shocked to the depth of my soul by the brutal slaughter that the army inflicted on the defenseless people. I saw the pictures of the slashed women.
And then he heard the reports that maybe his division would be called upon to put down any other uprising. He knew he didn't want to be a part of that. He felt the military was there to protect the people, not to be used against them. So not only did he decide to steal this MiG-29 and defect, but actually he decided that he was going to destroy the other MiGs that were at this air base. Well, this is the place. There's a market right here, and then some military housing over there, and then the entrance, and just open fields and some cows over here. It smells like cows. The book starts at the climax of the story where he's stealing his plane from this base behind me, Mikha Tskhakaya Air Base, May 20th, 1989, 0520 hours. It was just after dawn, right over there, by the way, on a clear spring morning in the Soviet Socialist Republic of Georgia. In half an hour, I would be in Turkey, having escaped from the Soviet Union aboard one of my country's most advanced fighters. But now I had to concentrate on the task at hand, disarming and binding Corporal Chomayev. At this point in the story, he's going on to the apron, and he has to overpower the guard. But before this, he's actually given tranquilizers to the rest of his comrades.
I decided to use a strawberry cake, and I put some tranquilizers in that cake.
Wait a minute, you're serious? You baked a cake and put tranquilizers in the layers? And
That's correct.
And then your fellow pilots ate the cake, which you gave them?
Yes.
And went to sleep?
Yes.
He's also broken off maybe a key or pins in the armory padlock so that they can't get to their weapons. He's taken keys for the vehicles and thrown them into the forest, maybe, who knows, somewhere around here. And then at this point, he just has to overpower this guard.
I was a wrestler, and once I won a championship. And I was pretty confident that it would be so easy to tie them up. You wouldn't believe this, but he was a wrestler too. He was pretty good.
Well, you can laugh about it, but he almost did you in.
Yeah, but what the heck?
They end up struggling, they go for their guns, and Zuyev ends up shooting the officer who survived. Zuyev gets shot in the arm. He gets into his plane injured.
I jumped in the cockpit, and I felt pretty comfortable, even being wounded. But when I tried to start the engines, it was just a dry bone click. I tried again. It didn't work.
Oh.
At that time, I thought, this is it. This is really the end of my life. I told myself, chill out. And then I began from the beginning, and I found the problem. At that moment, when I turned on those afterburners, I thought, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it.
He's able to take off here, ascend at 30 degrees into the sky. He jettisons his fuel tank because in order to use the machine gun, you have to jettison the extra fuel tank. So he jettisons the fuel tank. He turns around to do a 30-degree descent on the base because now his intention is to do a machine gun run on the rest of the MiGs that are on the ramp. He can't get the gun to fire, so he just does a flyby. He rocks his wings, and he heads to Turkey under full military power. So I imagine hearing the roar of that MiG and seeing it in the sky overhead.
I had to cross one of the heaviest defense lines in the Soviet Union. I used high speed and very low altitude.
Then he lands in Trabzon, Turkey.
And 5 minutes, nobody shows up. 7 minutes. Finally, one guard showed up, and he was scared to death. You had to see his face, you know. I think he thought that was pretty bizarre. This airplane with missiles and red stars, and he thought probably the Turkish was invaded. At that time, I only knew how to say, I'm American.
That's what you said?
Yes.
Did he understand English?
And then he smiled.
I was surprised how much I thought about Zuyev and his story after I finished Fulcrum. It's a great story, I'm glad he shared it, and I thought if there's anything that I could do to help share it, I would be happy to. I guess the book is kind of old now, and since there's no audiobook, maybe it's not that popular. But I first heard about it from an old farmer when I was attending the funeral of one of my friends. I guess it's the last thing she ever gave me.
Well, we headed out this morning at 10 a.m. to go to Senaki from Batumi, and now it's 7 p.m. We've arrived back here in my building in Tbilisi. I'd love to know your thoughts if you've read Fulcrum and what you thought of the airbase and the story today. As always, I'll talk to you in the comments below and look forward to seeing you there. Thanks again for watching, or as they say here, Medlaba. See you next time.